Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Well, my first guest is no stranger to the programme. I described her as a social justice campaigner. She's a lot more than that as well. She's been on the programme talking about different issues over the last year and a half. She's been in touch with me recently to talk about Ben Deevoy. I mentioned Ben is currently serving a 16-week sentence for basically criticising a judge's decision to give a suspended sentence to a man with thousands of images of child abuse on his computer. After an angry YouTube rant, which I haven't seen, I must be honest and say, he took it down voluntarily after calming down. We've all had a good rant at times and said things that maybe we should have thought about. However, despite not very many people seeing the video and it causing no harm whatsoever, a judge sentenced him to 16 weeks in prison under the Serious Crimes Act. This is an absolute outrage. Now, Victoria Lilly, my friend who's on the line to us now from Salford, recently launched a petition to compel the authorities in this city of Manchester to release him immediately. And Victoria, as I said, is on the line now in Salford. Welcome back to the show, Victoria. How are you?
Hi, Richie. I'm well, thanks, but I'm very concerned about Ben being in prison at this time.
Well, yeah, I can only imagine you are. Tell us the story from the start then, Victoria. Don't leave anything out. Where did this all begin?
Well, it all began with Ben opening up a newspaper and seeing an article about a paedophile in the local news. And this was in the Chester Chronicle, I believe, at the time, because Ben was living up in Upton, where the anti-fracking protection camp was at the time. Anyway, he saw this he saw this newspaper article, and he was outraged that a paedophile who'd been found with 3,000 indecent images of child abuse, some of which were at the most serious category, had been let off more or less with an 8-month suspended sentence, meaning he was just walking free on the streets. Now, Ben then filmed a video, and yeah, he did get angry in that video. He was ranting.
What did he say exactly in it?
I'm legally not allowed to repeat the video, I don't think, much. So
I'll tell you what,
paraphrase it.
Can you give me a couple of yes or no answers? Did he incite violence in it? Did he compel anybody, or did he say that it wouldn't be a bad idea if this guy got a bit of a hiding or anything?
Pretty much.
Right, okay.
Pretty much. Yeah, but, it was one of those. He also said other things about how it was wrong that the justice system is like that. What's the country coming to? It was all very political in a way, which is what Ben's about. And at the end of the day, he removed the video himself after just 3 days, and it had only had 14 views. So he showed that he knew that it was irresponsible, but he hadn't had any intent to actually incite anyone to commit an offence off the back of this video. It was just an angry online rant that was then removed. Yeah,
I can imagine what he did say. I mean, I didn't see it. I can imagine he said "'twould be no harm if this guy got got a bit of a hiding or got his head knocked in or whatever."
Yeah,
he said, yeah.
I think it was along the lines of he should have got a kick in the balls and not, which is actually what a lot of people might think about paedophiles, but it's not something anyone would intend to do.
No.
It's more sort of said in anger that they're not being locked away by the justice system. That's what we all want, really, is for proper sentencing to be handed down to sexual offenders.
So, Victoria, he didn't say, this guy lives here, somebody should go and do him in. He never said that.
No, he didn't even know his address.
He had no idea, so he didn't. Right, so he's had a rant. He's really cheesed off with the sentence, which is absolutely outrageous, by the way. If you have over 3,000 images of child abuse on your computer, and as you said, Victoria, some of the images were absolutely horrendous. They were of children being, horribly abused. Let's just say it like that and leave it as that. Ben, I suppose, is like most men and women. It's the sort of thing that makes you drop your cup of tea or your cup of coffee and scream, I cannot believe this. He did what activists do, and he turned his camera on himself and he had a good rant about it. But then he took it down without being asked to do. He took it down. And this is what I find really sinister then. So next thing, presumably he gets a knock on the door then.
3 weeks later, which is really, really odd because only 14 people had seen this, and most of them have been accounted for because they've come forward on a Facebook group and talked about it. And most people, we know who saw the video, and they were family and very close friends. So, it's very sinister that suddenly 3 weeks later he was arrested. And he was charged under the Serious Crimes Act, Section 47, which was about incitement. But Ben didn't have any intent, so he knew he was going through this court process. And they told him he could be looking at 16 weeks jail. But, in some ways, I kind of thought, well, he's going to get before the bench, and they're just going to sort of see that this doesn't make sense, because there's probably thousands of these videos still online by other people, and they're not going to jail, and nobody else has gone to jail, and the paedophile hadn't gone to jail. So when he actually got sent down, that's when I launched this group on Facebook, Free Ben Deevoy, because I thought there's got to be loads of people out there who think this is just really wrong. It's a travesty.
It's a travesty. Do you know what else is a travesty? I went looking for... I've got to be honest and put my hands up here. Ben was in brief contact with me just before he was sentenced. And I mentioned earlier on, I'm blessed with Claire, who's producing the programme for me now. But it's very difficult to do a programme like this. And I'd gotten back to Ben and said, we must get you on. And I left it at that. And that's my stupid fault. But these things happen when you're producing programmes. So I had intended on speaking to him. But before I knew it then, as you said, he was sentenced to 16 weeks. I'll tell you what's shocking about it. Knowing you were coming on, I tried to find any media coverage of it, Victoria, and our listeners probably won't be surprised. It's not being covered at all. This is a national story, this. If you're the editor of The Mirror, The Sun, The Mail, you want to be covering this. You want to be able to, because it's a sensational story, and that's what they do best, is sensationalism. You have a look and you say, holy Jesus, here's a guy who was complaining about a light sentence for, a very serious, serious threat to society, and he's the one who gets banged up in prison. No coverage of it, Victoria. None.
There was no victim in Ben's crime, and yet he's actually imprisoned for it. And I think that looks really suspicious, There's some other factors in this case that could draw your attention, and it should be a national story. It really should.
Well, we'll go ahead. What do you think is really behind it then?
Well, in general, there's a massive trend in paedophilia being exposed in people who've passed away or they die shortly after, so they're not coming to justice. Then there's light sentencing for paedophiles and sexualisation of children in the media. It looks like an agenda to me. And somebody pops up complaining about this, and there's an opportunity then, isn't there, to silence somebody who is very active. I mean, he was living on a fracking camp and he's very active on anti-fracking. And, some would say there's a connection between the fracking and the court system. Some people, they know each other. They might be members of the same old boys networks, the same Freemasonic lodges.
Yeah.
And, it just gets murkier and murkier the deeper you look into it, Richie.
It's filthy. Loads of tweets on this. The Order on Twitter says, please ask Victoria where the Crown Prosecution Service got the info from initially. Was it YouTube? Was it GCHQ? Was it police snooping? Because obviously somebody must have referred the post. And if only 14 people saw it, and Victoria, not in any way to laugh or to mock Ben, but I'm guessing the 14 views, 7 of them were probably Ben's. Because, he probably looked back at it a few times, didn't he? Probably had to look back at it a few times. Yeah, you looked at it. That's another one.
There was no victim, and we know who saw the video. That was people that wouldn't have reported it. So somebody was looking at his channel and gathering evidence. I mean, I won't lie. Many of us have had our Facebook profiles or other online activity monitored or messed with in some way, especially recently. Let's not lie about that. It does happen, doesn't it? David Icke would know all about that,
Yeah, he would. And I was picking a photograph from your Facebook page today, a different one to use than the ones I've used before. And I came across a nice one of you standing in front of one of those bus stop signs about deaths in British police custody over the last 30 or 40 years. And again, I tried to avoid sensationalism on the programme. But because he's been very active in the anti-fracking movement, and of course he will be known, because he's spoken out about the light sentence given to this guy and he's thrown his hat into the ring in terms of talking about child sex abuse, The first thing that came to mind when I saw that today was, I hope he'll be all right in there. Where is he in prison exactly?
He's in Walton Prison.
Where's that now?
That's in Liverpool.
Right.
And he's written to me from prison, and no, it's not pleasant. You know, he's got a very cold cell with no proper window. He's doing proper time. Obviously, people do say, you know, they glamorise prison a bit from the outside, but when you lose your freedom of movement, it doesn't matter if you've got a telly in prison. You've lost freedom. And you should only ever lose freedom if you've committed an actual offence in which there is a victim. Ben hasn't done that, and yet he's doing that time. And he's, you know, he needs our support, because if we don't get behind this, how many more of us are going to be in prison for spurious offences just to keep people silent?
Yeah, absolutely. While we're chatting away, I'm going to tweet out say it from me, the petition again. Folks, I'm asking you seriously, and I said it today, and I think it's the first time since I've begun doing this programme that I asked anybody to support anything. I normally let people make their own minds up, and I don't ask them to do anything. But I've tweeted it out right this second. Can you please retweet that and get other people to get it up to the 500 signatures that it requires? I'm just going to do a recap. It's 25 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. Ben Deevoy is serving 16 weeks in prison in Walton Prison in Liverpool because he made a YouTube video expressing his severe annoyance at the fact that a man who had 3,000 disgusting images of children on his laptop or his computer was given a suspended 8-month sentence. This is unbelievable, folks. So, of course, he's probably wrong to be ranting and raving and screaming. You could argue he isn't wrong. You could argue that the problem is that the rest of us aren't ranting and screaming alongside him. That's another argument you could make on that particular thing. He's hauled into court under the Serious Crimes Act. Doesn't get any more serious than that. And he's banged up for 4 months, while a guy who had images of children being raped on his computer is walking around. Holy Jesus. How many times is somebody like David Icke or Jim Marrs going to say the word is inverted? What's going on here? And Victoria, I want to get your opinion on this. We covered this on the show, it must be 2 weeks ago now. It must be 2.5 weeks ago. I saw this in the Daily Mirror. You must have seen this as well. And again, I nearly collapsed. I'm not one for dramatics now. I nearly fell when I read this. I was actually reading it on a tablet, walking around the house. That the police are, in Sussex, the police are knocking on the doors of paedophiles and asking them to stop. They're not arresting them. They're not charging them. They're visiting people that they think or know have downloaded or viewed indecent images, and they're saying, will you stop, please? And they're handing over a warning letter. It's a new scheme, basically.
Oh, a new scheme. It's laughing in our faces. Everything has been inverted. The absolute wrong values and energies are at power here, and the only solution is for everybody to start standing up together with the best of intentions and stopping it. It's come to that now, Richie, because otherwise we're all on the line. They'll have us all banged up. So we need to stand together, and we know it's wrong. Things like that police letter at the door, that's not going to work.
Imagine that. Can you imagine if you're downloading child pornography and some guy turns up or some woman and says, hey, listen, come on. I mean, a part of me is tempted to laugh. I get the giggles when I think of stuff like that because it's so outrageous. I actually start laughing. And when I read this story, I started laughing because I'm thinking of Mrs. Doyle and Father Ted, you know. Yeah. I'll go on, you know. I'll go on. Stop looking at the children now in the nude. I'll go on now. I will, PC. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Well, what is going on? How can we stand for that?
Well, this is the thing. We need to stop standing for it, don't we? Because the authorities aren't applying the best methods, are they? There seems to be corruption at the top. It's been uncovered many, many times. I'm not saying anything new here. We are parents, or our friends have got kids, or we're young ourselves. We all need to start standing up against this. And then people like Ben won't be on their own with it, will they? And that'll be harder then, won't it, to cover up?
Folks, thanks. You're absolutely spot on. Of course, it'll be harder to cover up if people support him. Sign that petition and share it with everybody. Tell your friends around the world, because this isn't just going on in England. It's going on in every country in the world. Tell your friends that a bloke who lost his temper over a terrible decision to put a paedophile back out on the streets with 3,000 images of children in terrible situations That guy who ranted about that is in prison and has a serious criminal record now, and it has probably got something to do with his prevalence in the Northwest in the anti-fracking movement, and as Victoria said, it's also got sinister implications as well because of the attempt to cover up child abuse in this country, or worse again, the attempt to normalise it. You know, the attempt to make
That's the reality.
That's the reality, you see. The attempt to normalise it. You know, and, you know, we could talk here about, was it Harriet Harman or was it Patricia Hewitt? I think it might have been Patricia Hewitt and others. The paedophile information exchange going way back. We could talk about that as well. Karen is listening in Glasgow. This is absolute madness. Very telling. Protecting the paedophiles and jailing those who find it heinous. David Stanford says, sign this petition, people. I did. It just took me a few clicks. It did indeed, David. Thanks for that. Yeah. Zana in New Zealand. Martin Houston, our friend, and he's a fellow activist of yours, Victoria. Martin, big in anti-fracking and raising awareness about paedophilia in London. Absolutely outraged he is that Ben Deevoy is in Malton prison for basically exercising his right of free speech to say what a terrible decision that is to not send that guy to jail. It's madness, Victoria.
Thanks for the support, everybody. You know, Ben is a very visible activist, and in a way he's taking the flak for the rest of us because he's written to me and he's said he's prepared to do the time if he can get attention onto this travesty, not just for his own sake, but because of the paedophilia scandals. And I think that's really brave of him. And everybody that can support this, it's a nationwide issue. It really is. Too
right it is. Loads of tweets on this. Patrick Garrett. How you doing, Patrick? Signed and shared, says Patrick. JP was on to say 1 in 5 police, 2 out of 3 judges, legal clerks are Masons. All of these. 1 in 5 police and 2 out of 3 judges and the legal clerks are Masons. Well, the GCHQ monitor Masons for dirt, presumably, and for leverage. Wake up, people, says JP. Derek was on to say, Richie, the only justice in this world is for them that can afford it. And of course, that segues into, presumably, he couldn't afford to hire himself a good barrister, could he not? Of course not. He's like the rest of us.
But, you know, if we don't feed this elite, then they don't have that power over us. And, you know, we can take our energy out of their system in many, many ways, starting now. We really can. You do it. Every time you publicise something, you're taking the power back, spreading the information. Everybody can get involved in things and make it better, but it just takes a lot of people. And hopefully the paedophilia scandal and the sexualisation of children is an issue that we can all get behind. You can see it with your eyes in the newspapers, on the TV, and I think that we need to do it for the kids and for the future, don't we?
Absolutely right, yeah. I know, I want to give a mention as well today that Wake Up Manchester meets in Piccadilly Gardens this coming Saturday.
Yes, it does.
I'm looking forward to that, I really am. I'm going to head in there about 11:30, and I know that 1 or 2 people who listen to the programme regularly who are in the area will be coming down as well. And it's really important, people, that you get involved. And there are Wake Up Manchesters in other cities going on where people are coming out to talk about these issues. And you won't do anything by sitting on your arse. If you get out there and you speak with people and you form little groups and you say, well, we can do this, we can start doing this, we can start a petition about this, we can go here, we can go and stand outside this gate and hold placards and protest this, we can join in with the anti-fracking protests. You've got to do that. Don't leave it to other people, because when they get rid of the other people, when they get rid of the protesters who can be bothered their arse, who can bother themselves to do it and not watch the match and not watch the television, and who get out and do, when they get rid of those people, the Victoria Lilies and the Ben Deevoys, it's you that's left then. Do you know what I'm thinking about this, Victoria? I'm thinking, you know, as somebody who studied history at 3rd level, it doesn't make me intelligent, but I did. I read and to be honest, I wrote a lot about the miners' strike. What an opportunity the British people had in the 1980s to stand behind the miners. What a missed opportunity that was, to stand up to the cabal and to the lunatics and to the corporations. And what are we now, 32 years since the miners. What I wouldn't give, you know, to be able to go back in time and tell people you really should support these guys.
Oh, definitely. I was born and raised on that kind of thing because my dad was very politically active. And, you know, the poll tax marches were my first taste of activism. And no, we're still standing for it. We're still paying council tax to corrupt councils, and people are starving because they can't afford to pay council tax, but then debt collectors have come after them and added fees. People are banged up when they complain about paedophilia. If you didn't stand up at the miners' strike, if you didn't stand up against the poll tax, you didn't stand up against the criminal justice bill, if you didn't stand up against any of that, why don't you stand up now and, expose it? We all know the truth. They're not working in our interests. We can do better. We can do better for ourselves, but we've got to come together.
Absolutely spot on. My great mate in Ireland, the actress Jean-Anne Crowley. Our listeners will remember Jean-Anne from lots of different things, Educating Rita, and of course the great drama Tenko on the BBC, Doctor Who. Wonderful woman, wide awake is Jean-Anne. She was on this programme. Why we take this stuff for granted still alarms me, says Jean-Anne. I wonder why. And there is a bit of that. There is. And I wondered, is our addiction to social media? While on the one hand, we learn about things. I wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for social media. I wouldn't know about Ben if it wasn't for social media. But at the same time, it's inducing a kind of laziness. Because when people see, there's Victoria Lilly now. She's doing something about that. In other words, somebody is doing something about it. I don't have to. This is the worry I have, you see, Victoria. Somebody else is doing it. Why haven't we... you'd need to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Why hasn't that inspired us to get up off our backsides? Why don't we see you and all the other activists who've been on this programme on social media? Why don't we go, brilliant, I'm going to go and meet him, or I'm going to go and meet her? We don't do that. We think, somebody is dealing with it. Great. It doesn't work like that. Go on.
People have been seduced into servicing their lower needs, sometimes their immediate needs because they're in poverty and they need to find food, or they're worried about stuff so they don't engage. But sometimes it's just because we're in this culture where we're sort of, it's me culture, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my greatest concern about all of this, because it seems like every week or every 10 days something heinous is spoken about on this programme, but it's something that could be dealt with if enough people got up and said, right, I'm going to go there. Like when people went to help Tom Crawford and stop his wrongful eviction in Nottingham. But yeah, it seems the more outrageous, like the Ben Deevoy thing. I mean, why it wouldn't motivate people to say, right, let's next week, let's go and protest outside the court where he was convicted. Let's go to Walton Prison and stand outside and tell the visitors going in there, do you know there's a bloke in there who should not be in that prison? He shouldn't be. But yet people think, right, somebody's on top of it. And we need to get away from that mentality.
I think there's deeper reasons though, isn't there? I mean, there's fluoride in the water, there's chemicals in the food, there's tones and frequencies coming through the television, and all of that adds to people's disengagement. It's not good for them, is it? But, if we can just, lift the lid a little bit and inspire them rather than telling them off, let's inspire them. Let's say, look, we can free Ben and we can press for paedophiles to be dealt with, or we can expose paedophiles in high positions and we can talk about it. We can do it. One by one. There are more people doing it now than there were 2 years ago.
There are, and you know this better than anybody because you've been very, very active in the anti-fracking movement and raising awareness. And if anybody's qualified to say, are the numbers increasing, it's you. And that's great, Victoria, to hear that. And I agree with you, by the way. We shouldn't be beating people up. And of course, we should be honest. I should say, I am that soldier. Here I am criticising people for doing nothing. And apart from making the programme, I don't do very much either, outside of it. And this is the thing, and I'm well aware of this, and I've said this before, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, yeah, there are things I could have attended in the past and didn't because, I was knackered and I went, I've had this all week and I've been thinking about it all week, I'm not going to do it. That ain't good enough, and I'm well aware of that.
Well, the modern world is constructed to keep people in a state of busyness because they don't want them turning inside and getting with things, do they? We both get caught up in that sometimes. But hopefully we'll see you at Wake Up Manchester on Saturday and feel the vibes there. And hopefully a load of people listening to this will come down as well.
Absolutely. And I think they will. I'm certainly meeting some of the listeners on Saturday morning. It's not the reason I'm going down. I was going down anyway because it's about time. Is that first of all I met you and had a cup of tea with you, and your lovely family and everybody else who works tirelessly with you in the anonymous homeless movement as well in Manchester, which is outstanding. It really is. By the way, kudos to everybody in Liverpool who's having a memorial for that gentleman, that homeless gentleman who died last week. I just caught that story as I was coming on air, so forgive me for not having the gentleman's name to hand. I'll dig it out and I will mention him by name because he deserves to be mentioned, that gentleman who died on the streets of exposure in Liverpool. Lovely that Liverpudlians are saying, but that's not acceptable. It isn't acceptable in 2016 that a man or a woman dies of exposure. Jesus Christ, people. It's outrageous that. It shouldn't be tolerated. And to have a memorial for him and to remember him is a great thing to do. And I really mean that. I'll give you the last word, Victoria, and then we'll move on. It's been terrific having you back on.
Oh, thank you, Richie. I just want to tell everyone again to add the Facebook group, Free Ben Deevoy, or to go onto the petitionsite.com and find the Ben Deevoy petition and sign that, because he needs to be out of prison. And it needs to be exposed that paedophiles are getting away with it at every level of society, and we want better. Fantastic.
I look forward to seeing you on Saturday morning. Keep up the great work, Victoria. Thanks again.
Thanks, Richie.
And bye for now. Victoria Lilly on the line to us there from her home in Salford.